right now there's about 84,000 different chemicals that are registered right now with the EPA. But what we have been able to see is that these toxicants, they actually are harmful in a variety of ways to our body.
Overall health is comprised of so many different elements, nutrition only being one of those. So it has been my desire to create the Vegan Michele podcast for some time now to share with you different perspectives on how we can truly live our best healthy life. And that's why I'm really excited to share with you my guest, Dr. Stephanie Peacock. Dr. Stephanie is a former U.S. national swimmer, and now she's coaching people for optimal health. She bridges the gap between athletic needs and whole food plant-based nutrition, making it possible to do both. She's also super passionate about environmental toxins and things that can be in our everyday life that we may not even realize have an impact on our health. We touch on the benefits of eating a whole food plant-based diet for athletes, but as well as anybody, and how to really break that down and go through that transition in an easy, doable, chunk by chunk, sustainable way, and actionable steps that you can take as soon as you're done listening to this podcast. So let's dive into my conversation with Dr. Stephanie Peacock.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Michele. So thank you for asking me to be on the podcast. I am so excited to be here and chat all things holistic health, nutrition, toxins, etc. So I was first introduced to whole food plant-based nutrition while I was in my chiropractic studies. So it was about a year into schooling is when I discovered plant-based nutrition. So I was actually an athlete for 16 years prior to school. I retired in 2016, right after the 2016 Olympic trials, and I got third at the Olympic trials, which means that they only take the top two. So I was like, oh, bummer, I missed it. But it was all good because I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just focus on what it is that I feel like I'm truly meant to do. Because I swam for 16 years, absolutely had a great career, loved every second of it, but it was 16 years. So I was like, okay, I got to move on to something else. So I knew I really wanted to help people, which is how I got into chiropractic. And I just love how it's such like a holistic healing side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a couple of really great chiropractors that I did work with throughout my swimming career. So I was like, well, they're helping people and they're really helping like diagnose any soft tissue disorders and things that don't seem to get diagnosed as well in other modalities and areas in the westernized world, right? So I was like, okay, so I'll get into this and we'll see what comes of it, right? And so that's what got me into the chiropractic. So as I was about a year into school, that's when I discovered plant-based nutrition. And I could not turn away from it. I was just like, the evidence was just like astounding. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to use with my patients. I am so excited because when it comes to chiropractic, right, we're working on soft tissue disorders, muscles, tendon, ligaments, nerves. But really the root cause of so many issues is inflammation, right? And so I was thinking a plant-based diet decreasing inflammation is going to be huge for my patients. So I was so excited to just dive into that with each of my patients, and willing or not willing, right, if they were wanting to, and just see how it would be able to really impact their health and like what I was working on. And I saw amazing effects once I was in my internship. And then once I got into actually working outside of graduating school, which I graduated in December of 2019. And and so I was just so excited because I was like, this is just such a game changer. And so that's really what kind of got me into plant-based nutrition, because I was really like, okay, let's see how I can implement this in my practice. And I saw firsthand how it was affecting my patients, how much better they were getting, like so much faster. And I could just tell in the tissue texture and the way I was able to adjust them, everything just went so much more smoothly. And I could not turn away from it. So I saw it firsthand working with my patients and myself as well. Myself and my family, my husband, we've been plant-based now for almost 6 years. And
awesome.
And so we, just in our health and our energy and our vitality, like we've just noticed such a big difference. And slowly but surely we've transformed our family and all our friends and everybody, and everyone says the same thing. So how could you turn away from that evidence, right? So
true.
Yeah. And so the reason I got into working with, I started working with more athletes. I do a lot of virtual nutrition coaching, and it's because I was an athlete for 16 years and I had no idea about plant-based nutrition. And again, talking about how it reduces inflammation I was like, oh, this is such a game changer for athletes. And so,
So do you feel like, sorry to interrupt you, but do you feel that, knowing what you know now, how would have that affected your swimming career? Or do you feel, I mean, I know you can't go back, but how do you feel what the difference would be?
no, it's such a good question because I've thought about it so many times. And I think it would have had such a profound impact because especially the older that I got, I was a long distance swimmer. So that is a really big toll. It takes a really big toll on the body, like the yardage and the training twice a day, everything for those events. And so recovery is absolutely key. It's key for every athlete, but really for the long distance and getting older, it really was key for me. And I noticed about the last year and a half of my swim career, I felt like I wasn't able to recover quite as well as I used to when I was younger. And so I really do think that if I had implemented more of a plant-based approach, it would have been like, I know I use this word a lot, but it would have been a game changer because I was recovering after my workouts with a whey protein shake and chocolate milk. And then, my lunches and dinners always had some sort of dairy and animal protein source, which we know are inflammatory. And so I really do think that just by switching up some of those things really could have helped a lot. And so that's why I'm so passionate about helping athletes, especially ones that are, older. I work with a lot of older athletes as well, like that are involved in triathlons and different things like that. And as we know, the older you get, the less, you can't bounce back quite as quickly as you could when you were like 15 or 20. And so, so I think, and I've noticed too, just working with people, they have so much more energy and they're able to recover faster from their workouts. So
that's wonderful. You touched on something that I've always found interesting. You said that the soft tissue and the muscle feels different on a plant-based diet, like when you're adjusting. Can you tell us the difference between what it feels like when you're not on a plant-based diet and when you are?
Definitely. Yeah. So there's two things. So one, with the tissue texture, you can usually feel how hydrated the tissue feels. And so with someone who is not plant-based, it doesn't feel like it's as, I guess, let's see, what's a good word, like bouncy. Like when it's very hydrated, it has sort of this like easy feel to it where I can like work on it and it's very easy to work with. It's kind of got this sort of like bouncy feel to it where it's like it resolves the issue quickly, whatever I'm working on. And so that's usually with a plant-based diet. It'll feel really good, really easy to work with. And we know because plant-based, you're eating so many vegetables and fruits and there's so much water in those, right? So aside from the water you're actually physically drinking, you're getting so much hydration through the food. And then when I'm working with someone who's not plant-based, the tissue will tend to feel a bit stringy and it'll feel kind of leathery. And so it feels like it's just not as easy to work with. And it will take me longer to actually kind of resolve the issue versus someone who is plant-based. It might take me like 1 to 2 sessions versus someone who isn't might take like 3 to 5. So I notice a big difference there.
That's so interesting. The only reason I ask that is because I've gotten chiropractic work as well as massage, and I've had them, me not say anything about my diet, but them ask me, are you vegan, or your muscles are hydrated, or something like this. And I've just always found that interesting without even saying anything, that you can feel those differences in your body, which is super cool. So working with a ton of athletes, what are the kind of changes that you make for people who are exerting a lot of strength, burning a ton of energy? What are the kinds of food choices or ideas do you give to them?
Yeah. So for someone who's maybe switching over that hasn't been plant-based previously. So usually, so whether they're an athlete or not, I'll usually just start with, okay, well, let's just think, what is that you're already eating that is plant-based, right? Because everyone's got something in their day that's definitely plant-based. And so usually for a lot of people, it seems to be their breakfast. It seems like a lot of people usually kind of eat like that bowl of oatmeal. So, I say, okay, well, let's start there and we'll start with 1 meal a day. Let's not overwhelm ourselves and just kind of think about, okay, what are all the different things that I can add in? Because I always like to say abundance is key. Don't think about what you're getting rid of. Think about what you can add to your plate for more diversity and more color and more, maybe some fats, like some different seeds and things like that. And so let's just focus on making that your goal. And then once you feel comfortable with that, we can move on to lunches and dinners. And usually it's like, okay, so you're probably already eating maybe a grain or some veggies and different things like that. That's perfect. we could maybe start with like the transition meats, right? So starting with like maybe a Beyond Meat source for a couple of weeks till you get comfortable, and then we'll switch over to maybe some tofu or tempeh, things that are less processed, right? And so it's all about just like that slow transition into feeling comfortable and not feeling overwhelmed, because it definitely can feel overwhelming. Because I know for myself, when I first switched, once I found out about everything, I went cold turkey and I was so overwhelmed. I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, what do I eat? So definitely recommend just taking it slowly, however long it takes you, whether it's 2 weeks or 2 months, as long as the more anti-inflammatory foods that you're adding to your diet, the more that's going to have a great effect on maybe what you are eating that might be causing a little bit of inflammation, right? It all balances out. So the more abundance, the better. The more color you can add, the more fiber, everything. So those are
I
usually
totally agree. And I think that transition is such a big key, because I think maybe people feel pressure that they have to change everything overnight. And then you're like, okay, now do I eat lettuce? Like, what the heck? What's going on here? But yeah, I think that's beautiful, beautiful recommendation to start with the meal that you're already eating. And typically it is the breakfast, and then switching slowly by slowly. There's no right or wrong here. It's just what's going to be sustainable for a person, their lifestyle. And as they're able to make those small little shifts, that's what makes something sustainable for life, I think. And so I love everything that you said there. So
Yeah.
I know, and I'm really passionate about this, but on my YouTube channel, I talk primarily about food and nutrition and share recipes. But we know that there's more to health and holistic overall health than just nutrition. It's a huge component of the puzzle. But I know that on your Instagram, you talk a lot about environmental toxins and other things that are in our daily environment, or that we're consuming or putting on our skin, that can be really, really hazardous to our health and can have an effect on our overall health. Can you touch a little bit more on how environmental toxins play a role on how they affect our bodies and our health?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is definitely one of my favorite topics. It's definitely like a sort of like a battle between both of the nutrition and the environmental toxins, what I'm more passionate about, because they're both such a big part of the health puzzle that you were just mentioning, right? They're super important. And I don't think the environmental toxins get touched on enough. And only because I don't think very many people are super, super aware of it. More people are becoming more aware now, but I would love to dive into this. So, so first I'll actually just talk about sort of the difference between, like, in the name of like toxins versus toxicants. So a toxin is a harmful substance that's emitted by an organism, and then a toxicant is a man-made chemical that is known to cause harm to our health. So when we're talking about environmental toxins, for those that are listening that might not be aware, we're actually referring to toxicants, but it gets termed environmental toxins. And so we're actually referring to these man-made chemicals that have been known to cause harm to our health. And so right now there's about 84,000 different chemicals that are registered right now with the EPA. And also, just to quickly say, not every chemical is going to be harmful to us, but we don't have any long-term health or safety data for humans. So that's why, and we have been able to link a few of these through different studies to our health. But anyways, and so I believe 34,000 of them currently are in active use. And so the thing is with these substances and these chemicals is that there is no long-term human health data on these. And so we see short-term studies, but the problem is that when they're doing these short-term studies is that they're actually increasing the dose exponentially of whatever the toxicant that they're using or the chemical. But the thing is that we're actually being exposed on a daily basis. So we're being exposed and on not as high of a dose. It's very like low doses that we're being exposed to over time that tend to accumulate in our bodies and then cause health harm later on. And so that's sort of the thing when it comes to these toxins, is that we're being exposed to them daily. And so we can't really, it's hard through the studies to be able to actually see, oh, okay, how is this really affecting our health? Because obviously, like, getting exposed to mercury at a really high amount is going to cause harm to us, right?
Yeah.
So, but what we have been able to see is that these toxicants, they actually are harmful in a variety of ways to our body. And so I'll talk about a few of them. So they can inhibit certain enzymes. They can inhibit our mitochondria. For the enzymes, when they inhibit our enzymes, enzymes are important in like methylation and detoxification and different things like the energy production in our body. With the mitochondria, that's the powerhouse of our cells. And so with these toxicants, when they're inhibiting that, it's causing a decrease in that energy production. We need that energy for so many different areas of our body. And so that's another thing when it comes to those, is the enzymes in the mitochondria. But another thing also is our hormones. And so this might be something a lot of people are pretty aware of, is that they're endocrine disrupting. And what that means is that they can mimic our hormones, and they can also act at the cell receptor site. So we see different things occur with this, with hormone disrupting, right? Fertility issues, insulin resistance, weight gain. There's so many things that we're seeing with this because we have hundreds of hormones in our body. And then the third thing is our gut health. And so we know now that gut health is superior. It is like the king in terms of like the center point of like everything that's occurring in our body, right? And so if our gut isn't functioning properly, then there's going to be other areas of our body that are probably going to be out of balance as well. And this is because 70% of our immune system is tied into our gut, and our gut really acts as a barrier and to be able to prevent the absorption of different things that we're coming into contact with. And so that's another thing that we see too, is that when it comes to the gut health, these toxins, they can come in and then they can cause a disturbance in the balance of bacteria in our gut, which we know is super important, right? We have the good gut bacteria, the bad gut bacteria, bad causing inflammation, good helping create short chain fatty acids, and things help decrease inflammation, right? And so that's another thing that we're seeing as well. And then also it's tied into brain and nerve health, and then also liver health. The liver, it's responsible for over like 70 different functions in our body. We have estrogen gets made there, the thyroid hormone gets turned on there. I mean, there's so many different factors that play into our liver. And so, so we're seeing a lot of these different issues arise now from accumulation of toxins in our body. And like, I know I mentioned a few of them, like, but it's type 2 diabetes, we're seeing polycystic ovarian syndrome, maybe resistant weight loss. People that are trying to lose weight, they might be, eating such a beautiful plant-based diet, trying to lose weight, and they're having a little bit of issue. It could be the toxin overload in the body. And so I will touch on one toxin that I think a lot of people are very aware of, and it's BPA. And so that stands for bisphenol A. And what it is, it was originally made to be a medication like for estrogen. And so, but then it was later found to be able to harden plastic and be waterproof. And so now we're seeing that chemical being used in everything, and like all our plastics. And even if something does say it's BPA free, they're still using different components, right? Like bisphenol I or T.
That's what I'm always like, okay, it's BPA free, but what's in here?
I know. So exactly. So it's like, okay, it's one free, but we're finding that the other ones actually are as harmful, or if not more harmful than actual BPA, right? And so I always tell people, don't get overwhelmed, because we are pretty much surrounded by so much plastic, but just do what's within your means, right? And so one of my favorite things to say is just, the easiest thing is, why don't you just swap out what you're drinking your water with? So instead of like a plastic water bottle, which we see everywhere, just switch to glass or stainless steel. Yeah. Right. So, that's kind of a little bit of a background in environmental toxins and everything.
And so do you think like cleaning products, laundry detergents, things we put on our skin, all of those can also have toxic chemicals in there, or toxicants that are just not harmful or not good for us? And whatever we put on our skin will absorb into our body too. And can you touch a little bit on just those household products and personal care products?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, you mentioned them perfectly. So like you just said, like the cleaning supplies is a really big one, right? Like Clorox. And I can't think of a lot of them off the top of my head because I haven't used them for a while, but there's a bunch of different cleaning products that they're using. They can clean surfaces, but at the expense of releasing toxic chemicals into the air. And the problem with that is that it's being absorbed into the air in our house. And we know that indoor air is 5 to 7 times more toxic than outdoor air. And a big piece of that is because a lot of the products that we are using that just get absorbed into the air, and then we're just breathing it all the time. And so many people work from home now, so they're being exposed to a lot of the chemicals that are in those. Other products too are the detergents, like you said, and then different products that we're putting on our bodies. So I always like to say, you know, like there's like the hair care. So like your shampoo, conditioner, body wash, deodorants, lotions, and then what you're, you know, brushing your teeth with, your toothpaste, even floss. Floss is a big one as well. And then just like hand soaps, and then water is a big one for me, because we need to be drinking a lot of water. And unfortunately, the water systems in most places are, there's over 200
fluoridated. Yeah.
Just there's lots of stuff in the water. And so getting a quality water filter also is super important. But yeah, usually I always like to say when I'm working with people is obviously start with what you can control. And so and without getting overwhelmed, kind of just touching back on the plant-based diet, right? Okay, let's not like overwhelm ourselves, because, you know, we've been doing this for a while. So our bodies are so resilient. And that's something that I also want to touch on too. Our bodies are made to heal. And when they're given the opportunity, they absolutely will. And so don't get overwhelmed with hearing all this information, because there's such easy steps you can take, and actually ones that are free and don't actually cost money to start out. And so, for example, when it comes to that indoor air, instead of swap out the toxic cleaners instead of having to buy something, just use like vinegar and water with maybe a little bit of lemon. And that's really easy and non-toxic to use. And so that's a super easy step. Don't wear shoes in the house, tracking things in from the outside. That's another really easy one. And then also making sure you're vacuuming and wet dusting regularly, because we know a lot of these toxins get found in the dust particles. And those are 3 really easy things you can do. And then opening up your windows, as long as the outdoor air is nice and clean. Opening it for about like 10 or 15 minutes a day, twice a day, is really great for just releasing the air that's been stuck in the house all night. And so those are some really easy swaps that you can start to do.
I love those because you can start them right now. And another thing that I did when I first started, well, this channel actually, when I first started, it was all about clean products, because I had been vegan for some time, but I was like, oh my gosh, everything I'm using is toxic. And I was a professional performer, and I was piling loads of makeup on and then sweating under stage lights. And this was all seeping into my system. So it was something that I was super passionate about as well. But what I did to just save money is, okay, I understand the repercussions of using this, and now I'm going to use this bottle of whatever until it's gone. And when I go to purchase my next one, I'm going to make a better choice, a cleaner choice. And then I would just start going through, whether it be makeup or laundry detergent or cleaning supplies. Okay, well, that was horrible, but I'm going to use the whole bottle of it. And then I found another natural product that I liked or didn't like. You know, you just trial and error, and you do one thing at a time. But I do think that vinegar and water is phenomenal. It's phenomenal for mirrors and glass. And I clean primarily with vinegar and water and soap on, like, just use like natural dish soap and water on my floors, and it's fine. You know, it really doesn't take that long to get used to it. And I have a funny story real quick. I ran out of laundry detergent the other day, and I was ordering it, but it's not come yet. And so I went to my parents' house, and I'm like, can I just borrow like a little bit of laundry detergent? They have a really toxic brand. I can't stand the smell of my clothes. My whole house smells. And so when you pull yourself away from that for a little bit and then you reintroduce, you're like, holy cow, this is truly toxic.
I know exactly what you mean. Because even if I go to like a friend's house or someone that's using, even like, it's something I forgot to touch on was like, anything scented, right? And that's probably what you're referring to, right? Is like that smell that you're getting. And so, yeah, like if they're using like air fresheners or those diffuser things that they plug into the wall, right? Or even, like just like the detergent on clothes and things like that. It's amazing how, like, when you stepped away from that for some time and then you get reintroduced to it, it's almost too much. Like for me, when I walk into like a Target or like something like that, I mean, I can deal with it, but it's like, it's
you can
really
smell it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, yeah. So
It's crazy. And I remember, I think that anybody can change if they want to and they get the information that's going to motivate them to do so, whether we're talking about diet or we're talking about, switching out self-care products and cleaning stuff. But I think that it's really amazing how the sensitivity that comes from stepping away from something like that, whether it's the animal-based products or products in general, and then the reintroduction will make you see, wow, there really is something to this. Because in the beginning, I was that Bath and Body Works girl, the scented candle like everywhere, and I was dousing myself with chemicals. It's just pretty crazy.
Oh, it's okay. Me too. I know. I feel like most of us probably have been at some point and you just don't realize it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's also great marketing, right? So all the companies, they make you feel like you need this or you need that to look this way or feel that way. And so, and everyone else is using it. So it's like, okay, well, this is normal. So why not? So, yeah, but then once you start to, and I love what you said about using up the like whatever it is that you had and then moving on to the next things. I think that's really important because I think it can be really, really overwhelming.
And
Like
expensive, really expensive. Yeah.
yeah, super expensive and super overwhelming. And it's because it's like it seems like there's like a million other things to do, so it's like, oh my gosh. So I think just like you said, just take it one step at a time. Like maybe you're close to running out of like your mascara, so why don't you just like opt for, there's tons of great clean beauty companies now. And
Now
just
there are
jump on.
so many, and they're really good quality. Like when I started doing all this about 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of choices and things sucked, but they've gotten so much better.
Amazing. 15 years. I love that. Oh my gosh. Wow. So yeah, so I've been on my clean journey for about like 2.5 to 3 years now.
Awesome.
So
That's
yeah,
so
so
good.
when I first was, made aware of it, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many options. So for you
Yeah.
15 years ago, you're probably like, all right, like one or two companies.
But yeah, there's so many now. It's amazing. So, tell me, I'm going to kind of switch back. I'm looking at my questions here, and I'm going to kind of switch back on to your Instagram. You have very doable kind of meals for people, doable steps that break things down into chunks. If someone's brand new transitioning over to a whole food plant-based diet, what are some tips that you can give everybody for, okay, I'm going to do this. I've already, crowded out the bad, and my breakfast is now plant-based, my lunch is plant-based, and I'm working on my dinner a couple times a week. I'm having meat or whatever. What are some doable chunks just for people to, or doable steps for people to kind of keep aware of so that they can successfully transition fully?
Absolutely. So I think one of the big things is keeping it simple and not feeling like you need to switch up every meal constantly. I think just having a plan, as simple as it sounds, just maybe for the first 3 days of the week, you're eating the same meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then maybe for the next 3 days or 4 days, if you want to switch up the dinner a little bit or the lunch a little bit, and I'll go into how like simple ways to do that. But I think just having a plan and not feeling like you need to constantly have like a crazy variety or a crazy different recipe every single time, like maybe making leftovers, things like that are super simple. But what I usually recommend is just have an idea of what it is that you want to make throughout the week. So let's say breakfast is oatmeal. You can make oatmeal in a variety of different ways, right? So like one way I can touch on is, let's say you want to do like an apple cinnamon oatmeal. The next day will be like a banana walnut oatmeal. This is the same. You're just switching up maybe two ingredients. And so those are super simple ways to just keep it simple, but also keep it different too, right? Without feeling overwhelmed. And the same thing with lunches and dinners. I always say, burrito bowls, Buddha bowls are really just some of the easiest ways to go, because you pretty much just create that base with your quinoa or for your grains or your legumes, different things like that, or your potatoes, and just have that as like sort of the base. And then the vegetables you can switch up super easily. Like, you could have broccoli, cauliflower, carrots one day, and then the next day you could do some like onions, bok choy, radishes. Like, you can just switch up the different veggies to make it different. And then also adding in like a fun protein source. So maybe like a tofu or a tempeh or a seitan if you can tolerate wheat products and different things like that. Just adding something like that in too to switch it up a little bit. And then change up the dressing. So the dressing doesn't have to be the same every single day. I personally keep it the same because I'm super, super simple and I eat really, I just don't like to overwhelm myself too much because I'm busy. And so I just want to have something that's super easy and ready to go. So I'll usually prep a dressing and it'll be good for the week. But you can switch up the dressing, right? And so that can, the dressing really can, even if you had like the same exact bowl, if you just have a different dressing, it changes the flavor profile completely. And there's thousands of dressing recipes on the internet. Like you don't even need to buy a cookbook for it. You can just type in vegan, no oil dressing, and then you'll have so many that pop up. And so
many.
Yeah. And usually what I like to do is I think of my plate as just to make sure I'm getting everything. So once someone feels really comfortable with just adding in all the plants and maybe getting different varieties and stuff, and they really want to kind of get into the nitty gritty of making sure they are getting enough of their macro and micronutrients, I always say, okay, well, make sure you have between 2 to 3 non-starchy veggies, right? So for diversity, fiber, micronutrients, and then make sure you have a starch. So whether it's your legumes or whether it's your potatoes or your like rice or quinoa, different things like that. And then make sure that you have a little bit of a protein source. And so like maybe like some tofu or tempeh, something like that, or it doesn't even have to be like, you don't even have to have the protein source. I just like to add it in because I'm very active. And I usually recommend that for my athletes just because the amino acids are important for rebuilding muscle and everything like that. But so having a little protein source, don't need much of it. And then for a fat source, an avocado or a nut-based dressing. So I personally opt for the dressing just because it's easier for me. So I just will usually make like an almond butter dressing or a cashew-based dressing, something super simple. And then there's my fat source. And then voila, you have
a full plate of nutrients. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you feel crazy, add in some sprouts, or if you're growing your own sprouts or microgreens for more micronutrients. And then I always say too, along with the sprouts is, add in an herb, maybe an herb or 2 herbs. Those are like the powerhouses of the plant kingdom. So adding those in is beautiful. And then when you're making like a stir fry or something, and then different spices and stuff, but that all comes with time, right? It's experimenting, seeing what works with you. I have my spices and herbs that I personally love to use, like rosemary, thyme, and sage. And I'll literally just chop it up. And when I'm talking about the non-starchy veggies, I'm really actually what I'm doing is I am just like cutting those up and I'm making a stir fry out of it, like water-based stir fry. I'm not using oil. I just put in a little bit of water and stir fry it with different spices and herbs. That's how I'm getting all those micronutrients. And then I prep my starches ahead of time for the week so that they're in the freezer and ready to go. And so I have an Instant Pot, which I recommend for anybody going plant-based because it's the easiest thing in the world. But I'll like 3 cups of beans in there. And then I have enough for my husband and I for like a while, and I'll just put it in the freezer so it doesn't go bad. And same thing with my greens. And that way, when it's time to eat, I just heat it up. And then my stir fried veggies are there, they're done, put them in, and there's a meal. Super easy.
That really takes the guesswork out of it. And, I think that sometimes people get concerned that, oh, my food's not varied enough, I'm going to be lacking in some nutrient. But as long as, like you touched on before, you are looking at, when you go to the produce aisle, getting vibrant, the juiciest, the ripest, beautiful produce that you can find. And if you eat the same 3 to 5 meals over and over with variety, even for a couple months at a time, you're going to be okay. And, at that point, then you're kind of sick of that and you're ready to branch out and try something new. But I think that the batch cooking of the beans, legumes, and the grains or the potatoes or whatever it is really a game changer, because when you have these things in a clean kitchen environment and you don't have a bunch of junk around, when you're hungry, that's what you're going to grab. And by default, you're helping yourself succeed.
Totally. I love that you said that, because that's something I forgot to mention that I do touch on with my clients is that one of the biggest first steps is like starting to also maybe decrease what's in your kitchen of processed foods and sugars, and maybe if we're starting to decrease the animal products, obviously decrease those. But if it's there and if it's within sight, you're most likely going to eat it, even though you maybe try to hide it, it's there. And so Yeah. And I love that you said that. So yeah, definitely like it's important to try to create a system that really works for you. But what I find that works for me and the majority of people is just making sure you don't have those in the house. And it's okay to have something processed here and there. Absolutely. Like you shouldn't have to be 100% perfect, right? Enjoying out and, or whatever it is that you prefer. Right. But at least for the majority of the time in your kitchen, like having that what you get from the produce section, the vibrant, beautiful foods and your prepped meals, like your prepped beans and potatoes and grains and things that are so easy. So that way, when you're starving after a really long day, instead of ordering Taco Bell, you're going to maybe just, which would take longer than probably just whipping together your already prepped beans and rice and then like stir frying a couple veggies, right? In less than 10 minutes. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's more important what we do on a consistent day in, day out basis, as opposed to what we kind of splurge on, a once in a blue moon. That's not going to be causing the lifestyle diseases. That's what we do on a consistent basis. So I think that nutrition is super important. And I love everything. I know there's so much more to be said about the environmental toxins. And I think, a doable thing are some of the things you already brought up, just that are free, and then just switching out the bottles of whatever as you go. And, there's other elements of health as well. Rest and relaxation, that is super important. Stress reduction, getting outside in the fresh air, all of these things coalesce together for overall health. But I think these are really important things to touch on and to let people know, because like you said, a majority of people may not even be aware of the toxins in their home that are not so great for them. So you have a lot of wonderful information on your website and your Instagram. So can you tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you and learn all the things that you're sharing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do want to touch on one thing that you just said that I love and about overall health, but it's absolutely true what you said. And the nutrition actually really does tie into the environmental toxins so well, because fiber is a natural binder for a lot of these toxins too. So actually it goes hand in hand by supporting your gut, and that supports your liver, your big detox organs. You're actually really helping support your body into detoxing all of these chemicals out of your body. And so that's the beauty of how the plant-based diet works, and just optimizing environmental toxins, right? Like, well, optimizing getting them out of your body. So I just wanted to touch on that last point real fast.
No, I think that's so important. And the all of the fibrous plant foods, they act as a broom to get that stuff out. And once your body gets the signal that, hey, they're putting good stuff in, we can start to, break down this stuff that we've been harboring in different areas of our body. Let's get this out. So absolutely, it all ties together.
It does. It really does. So yeah, so I just wanted to mention that one last part, because I love how you said that, how it was there's so many different aspects of health. So yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at my website, www.stephaniepeacock.com. And then also on my Instagram is where, like Michele mentioned, that I put a lot of my info on there as well. Like little tips and tricks with environmental toxins and food and stuff. And that's at WFPB_doctor. That stands for Whole Food Plant-Based. And yeah, those are the two places that you can find me.
That was such a joy to speak with Dr. Stephanie. If you'd like to learn more about her, I will link her information in the show notes, as well as the description if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe or follow wherever you are listening to this podcast so that you don't miss out on upcoming episodes. I'm truly passionate about living a holistic life, and I believe there is so much to that, and we're going to dive in deep in each episode. So thanks for being here. See you next time. Bye.